movie starts with a scene 5 years ago. Bob's wife and child are killed. Devastated, Bob moves into a smaller house to get rid of the haunted memories. He buys some fish as an attempt at relaxation and companionship. Bob falls for Paula, but she treats Bob very poorly and won't give him the time of day, so he creates wonderful hula girl Vanessa and superimposes her over Paula's frame. Vanessa was indeed Bob's virtualization of the Hawaiian girl. She seems to appear whenever he comes contact with the hula girl. His doll broke, but only her face remained undamaged, just like Vanessa's body was paralyzed except for her face. After destroying his apartment, not maintaining the fish tank for a few months and continuing his train ride to Crazy Town, Bob brings the gun into work. As real Bob is walking to the spot where he is going to open fire, he is imagining the outcome of his shooting 5 people and then himself. However, since he couldn't witness the events in a world without him in it, the shooter part of him gets personified as the Coleman guy. This is also why Fantasy Bob drops the 6th bullet, that was the one meant for him, hence, he lives in this version. Bob shoots Coleman and becomes a hero with nobody questioning why he had a loaded gun on him at work. When Bob comes home for the 2nd time and tosses the apple juice lid into the sink, there is one hummingbird in the window. Everyone who disliked or paid no attention to Bob all of a sudden loves Bob and invites him to play with them. Bob gets rewarded with a sweet promotion and a sweet car. When Fantasy Bob is trying to decide if he will help Vanessa off herself, he writes out, "Should I finish what Coleman started?" However, IIRC, "Should I finish Coleman," is bolded, the other words are not. Fantasy Bob gets the fantasy girl. Fantasy Bob gets introduced to the grief counselor and instantly begins avoiding him. Fantasy Bob's enjoying all the imaginary attention, so he avoids the grief counselor like the plague. If you have come this far in the video, please subscribe to this channel to never miss amazing content like this. Grief counselor finally meets up with him and shows Bob the note, hoping he will accept that he is the problem. And the picture he painted on the head of a match was Icarus flying to the sun. It was Bob's real dream of flying away, and yet the image he paints is one that anyone that knows mythology knows will not have a happy outcome. It was yet another clue as to where this movie was going. To represent a tiny, small and hidden aspect of himself, his beauty/feelings was small and hidden. At this point, Fantasy Bob sees a maintenance guy sitting in his usual lunch spot with his old briefcase and his old hula doll. Bob follows the guy into the basement and finds a collection of souvenirs. Bob tries to pin the problem on the maintenance guy, but the grief counselor traps him by telling him, "You're the problem, Bob." Going back to the reference, sacrificing himself to save the herd. Shooting yourself would save the others. Fantasy Bob's bubble pops and reality seeps into his fantasy. He loses the girl, loses the car, loses the nice clothes and loses the job. Fantasy Bob gets in his dirty old car, hops in and metaphorically drives back to reality. Fantasy Bob blinks out of existence and we cut back to real Bob standing in his final spot. He looks up and realizes that there are no brightly colored snowflakes hanging from the ceiling as he pops back into reality. He sees Vanessa flickering in and out, revealing Paula in her place. He lifts his foot to see the 6th bullet, his bullet, flickering in and out, it disappears, it's now in the gun to be used, not on the floor. Bob realizes his voice of reason is right and that he is the problem. So, kablamo, down goes Bob. The imaginary Vanessa, no longer needed, puffs out of existence into the form of a hummingbird as Paula pokes her head into the shot. Cops show up at ADD and take Bob's keys. Cops go to Bob's house and read his note, which was only neat and tidy in his fantasy. In reality it was wrecked. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let us know in the comment section below which movie you want us to recap next. As always, until the next time.